All right. Good morning, good night, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am super excited to have you guys with us. My sister in success, my friend, Miss Brenda Bertrand. So I'm going to ask everyone mute their microphone. And just know that we are recording this session. So if you feel like you don't want to be recorded, make sure you keep your, don't turn your camera on. It's perfectly fine, but you can still, at the end, ask questions. So I just want to welcome you. For those of you guys who do not know me, I am Dr. Ashley Dash. I am a career branding expert. And like I say, I'm a recovering perfectionist, right? And I am on this journey this year, and I've had a little bit of struggle. So I wanted to kind of talk about that. So we'll jump into that and then we'll actually start the conversation. So as you guys may know or may have seen on Facebook or in your inbox, if I've emailed after you jumped on the email list, is that, the Lord gave me a word this year, and the word for this year was mindfulness. And I was not, to be honest, very excited at all about that word. I wanted something that's more like active, like, breakthrough or shift or jump. I wanted something in my mind that was more exciting. So I was sharing that with some of my friends and my mom, just around like, it's just mindfulness, rest. I just didn't understand, and it just wasn't, I just didn't feel it, right? To be honest, like it just wasn't something that I was really excited about. And it's actually kind of sad. And I was kind of like, to be honest, I'm not gonna say low key, I was kind of mad at God. Like, why would you give me this word? You created me, you know me. And I'm not that type of person that just like chill out. I am definitely an action taker. So to get this word just kind of threw me off. And as I was having this conversation with my mom, I kind of realized that she doesn't really rest. She raised me in a single parent environment. So she never modeled for me how to rest because she didn't get the opportunity to. Okay, so I had that thought, but I didn't really think that much about it. And then I was up super late one night, and I was on Google, our friend, right? And I was Googling, how do you rest? And it dawned on me that I had to go to Google because I didn't know how to be mindful. I didn't know how to rest. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, I've gone through all these years of living, and I am looking to Google, right, to learn how to rest. And that's kind of where the journey started. So I put a Facebook post on that says, hey, I just realized, and I started thinking about all of my aunts and my grandmother and my friends, and we don't really rest together. We do other things together, but we don't rest. And I asked the question on Facebook, and I was like, hey, I think it's time we have a conversation about Black women resting. Are we going to have this conversation or not? Like, I was putting it out there because, to be honest, I was just confused and I was venting. And then I got all of these responses, and I was like, oh, I'm not alone. There are actually other women. There are other people here who are struggling like I'm struggling, or having the conversations. So as I was going through this journey, I talked to Brenda, right? I always call Brenda my personal mindset coach, right? She always helps me get right. And we were having a conversation around mindfulness and just some other things spiritually, and just kind of preparing for the year. And she mentioned this one like sentence. She said a lot of wonderful things, but this one sentence is what really grabbed me, and what really I want to talk about for all of us today. Was she mentioned that Black women resting is a revolutionary idea. And I was like, how is that a revolutionary idea? Like, everyone rests. But when you think of like rest or mindfulness, I have to be honest, the first thing that comes to my mind are like white women doing yoga. Like, I don't necessarily think of Black women. So when she said it and she kind of broke down the different layers of why it's revolutionary for us to rest, and just all the things that kind of come along with that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, we're not built or taught for that. So that's what this conversation is going to be about. It's going to be a continuation of that kind of private conversation that we started, along with some tools, some tips, some life experiences around what that looks like. So I am excited and I am thrilled to have this conversation specifically for Black women. And if you have any questions, or, we're going to take those at the end, but definitely put them in the chat. but we're going to have this kind of open dialogue between myself and Brenda. I'm just going to ask questions that I personally want to know, and she's going to share. And then as I see things in the chat, if it's relevant to ask, I'll ask then. But if not, I'm going to open up the mic towards the end, and we're going to give other people opportunity to ask questions and to hear based on and to ask questions based on what they hear and what they're going through. So for the people that have just joined, thank you. So I see Crystal in the room, Kivia, Lanisha, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Vicky, I'm so glad that you're here. We have more ladies on the way, but I'm excited. So Brenda, can we just start with the idea? Well, you can introduce yourself, obviously, do that. Yeah. But then let's just jump right into the conversation around Black women in rest being a revolutionary idea.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Dash. I really appreciate it. And what's really powerful is to just even see our faces and our pictures on the screen. How often do we have spaces where it's just us having a conversation about us, about our lives, and how unique it is? And so I am not the original person to ever say rest is revolutionary or Sabbath or perfectionism is a myth. That's something that exists, right? It's not a new idea. But for Black women, we have to take it way back. Okay, so at least 400 years in terms of how we came to the country in which we live, that we were stolen from our motherland. Some people stolen from their mother's arms and brought to stolen land, right? Stolen from our land and brought to stolen land to work and to reproduce workers. So there's something unique, and I love Dr. Dolores Thompson, Dolores Williams, who is a womanist theologian. And she is one of the women who talks about how Black women have one of the most unique identities in that there are no other human beings who have been used, and I quote, for both reproduction and labor. That we are on this particular soil if you live in the US, and as Caribbean people or across the African diaspora, we have been used to do the work of building nations, cities, production systems, and our children were also used to work. So when we come to this conversation, and if you have Indigenous background, if you have Native American, so then you go even further back as to how you were treated, your body was treated. And all of this, Ashley, all of this, Dr. Dash, lives in us on a cellular level, that from the moment we were aware of our existence within a stolen context, within a work context, we were told your value is based on what you can do to build our system, to build our infrastructure. And the offspring that you have is also meant to work. So I like to start that off, and I know that was part of the conversation that led to this idea that rest is revolutionary because we're going against a narrative that has been spoken, taught, conditioned even in us from our history of existence and of our origin story in this country, or through colonization and slavery, etc., across the African diaspora. So to say now rest is to say go against the thing you've been told and is in your system for over 400 years. That's just the starting point.
So, okay, and that's where I was very like when you broke that down for me when we were having that conversation, I was mind blown because I never think about it. Like, the history, right? We all know the history, but when you talk about it from a cellular level, right? You talk about your DNA, right? Because we know DNA goes back hundreds of years, right? That's how you can pinpoint where you belong to, right? In other countries. I was like, so basically I'm wired not to rest. So the fact that I can't rest isn't anything wrong. It's actually indicative that what they did is actually right, at least for them, but not necessarily for me. So I was just like, that was a lot to take in, right? When we had the conversation, I was like, no one's ever broken down for me, to be honest, that plainly. Like outside, they talk about slavery. They don't talk about the impacts of slavery for me personally, outside of
Right.
like, Black Lives Matters and things like that. I'm talking about like, why can't I go to sleep at night? You know what I'm saying? Like, why do I have anxiety? Right? Why do, when I say why me, it can be myself or my friends or, Black women.
Mm-hmm.
And you start
Mm-hmm.
having these mental health conversations, and we're
Yeah.
at higher risk for all these areas, but no one,
Mm-hmm.
links it back to what you said. Like, this is a
Yeah.
revolutionary. We weren't designed or created,
Yeah.
back 400 or 500 years to rest,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's fascinating actually is we live into the story that is most often told to us and rehearsed and most often modeled, right? And so you're not walking around consciously like, oh, 400 years ago, my ancestor's ancestor was stolen from my, like, there's not a conscious awareness, but exactly what you're saying, right? And I'm moved by that is there is DNA, there is conditioning, there is historical, generational, on a cellular level, an awareness that my worth is based on my work, on my production. And we become what we hear the most and what we see modeled. What we do see now is we can see grandmama and mama, so my mama's mama, like all that, we can say, I remember that she never rested. She was always working. She was always carrying the burdens of the family. So you see whatever story is told to us and whatever we see modeled becomes the thing that we live into, because you can only do what you've seen, right? And the work of undoing that and unlearning that is a difficult work because you're going against the tide of 400 years. And even if you just say, I'm going against the tide of grandma and mama, that's at least 50 something years that you're trying to push against. And I will say this, and I don't know if I said this in the last conversation, is we do what we are rewarded for, right? So we lean into, if I'm a worker and that's my value, and I'm here for everyone, and I carry the burdens of my family and my work and my society and all that, I'm on the bottom of the barrel, everybody's on top, because that's what's been passed down, but it's also what's rewarded. So you don't get rewarded for rest. No one says, Dr. Dash, have you rested today? You have to invite people into that conversation.
Right.
But there's a whole system of oppression that rewards you for being the super woman, the super Black woman who can handle everything, do everything, and keep it going without even flinching your face. You're rewarded for that monetarily, with affirmation, etc. So we lean into the things that are actually tearing us apart.
So I want to talk about the Black woman complex, and then I want to
Yeah.
kind of get into the conversation of, okay, we're aware of this, and we kind of, maybe we didn't know, but now we know kind of a starting point of where it comes from, and maybe why, we struggle with it so much.
Mhm.
Um, and I just want to put it out there for you guys. I'm, to be honest, I'm struggling with the mindfulness and the rest, right? It's just something that I'm gonna be working through all year. So I want you guys to know that essentially what we're saying is, like, if you're struggling with it, it's natural, like it's normal, like that's kind of just kind of designed for you for not to be not be in that space. So we talk about, I call it the Black Superwoman hero, right? Everybody is very familiar, with that that identity, right?
Yep.
I remember being younger, and you're right. I remember being called lazy or get out of bed as early, you should be doing something. I remember being told like these things,
Mhm. Mhm.
not to downplay like my mother or my grandmother or any adult, who was my
Yeah.
aunt, but like there's stuff to be done. Like, because they were taught there's things to
Yep.
be done. Like,
Yep.
my grandmother was like, she was disabled, but she still had stuff to do. She had to be up early. You got to pay bills.
Yep.
You got to,
Yep.
do all these things.
Yep.
So how does that work in terms of, we have this, Black woman complex where like we're the strongest one, we're always the last to leave, the first to arrive, the
Yeah.
hardest working. How do
Yeah.
we even begin to unpack all of that and to have that in the media, right? Because you see it on
Yeah.
TV, and then to
Yeah.
take rest. How do you try to, bring the two together?
Yeah. I'm fascinated by just kind of even the language you just use as it relates to a young Black girl being told, get up, it's morning, you need to get to work, and how familiar that would sound, familiar that sounds to what our what has been passed down. It's a new version. It may be a something that feels familiar and doesn't feel as violent as it may have been said in the past. It's time to work. It's time to get to work. Laying down is not rewarded. Resting is not rewarded. It's actually seen as negative. I think that's really a powerful thing. And for all of us on this call, my soul, your soul, all of us, to really think, do we have a voice in our mind, in our head, that still plays that? It may have been mama when we were growing up because she was just trying to get us into a place of being responsible kids, but it was passed down to her, and it was passed down to her. Now, do I perpetuate? Am I reinforcing that level of oppression when I don't need it? Maybe you needed it when you were 12 and you needed to get up because you were sleeping until noon. But now, as a grown woman, having worked an entire work week, is there still a voice that says, chop, chop, it's time to get up. You need to go to work. You exist. Your value is based on work. So I just wanted to just share that before we move on. So any thoughts on that, Dr. Ashley, before I pivot a little bit?
Yes. I to be honest, when you said that, I was like, whoa, like
Yeah.
that's, I never, just the way you brought it together, that's crazy. Okay. I never thought about what I heard being passed down, to be honest, from like a slave master. Like that, when you just said it, I was like, oh, like, so okay, that's very powerful. That's something that I actually need to go back and think about. That's number one. Number two, even now, as an adult, I am not an early riser. Like I'm not a morning person, and I get a lot of flack for that as an adult. And my question kind of is, I wonder, is that related to the idea of work? Because in my mind, I've always kind of gone against the grain, and me always saying, I don't have to do that. Like, I don't need that much time. Like, why do I have to be up if I don't have anything to do? But the rule in the house was, if I'm up, everybody's up. Like, I've always kind of struggled with that, you know, in terms of my family and those in authority, because to me, it just didn't make sense. Like, even as a child, I'm like, what are we gonna do? Like, I'm awake because you're awake, but what are we doing?
Yeah. And I think you're speaking to something that is important, and that's why I brought it up. And I want to go back to your question, and I'll have you restate it again since we veered off a little bit, but everything is on path, right? Is what you were doing is challenging what has been passed on, the story that's passed on, right? You were challenging that and starting to rewire some of your thought processes and some of the pathways that are dug so deep, right? You are literally starting to rewire, and that's what this conversation is about. And this is what relationally we need to honor in each other. Is, can I say, as a young Ashley who's grown up to be Dr. Ashley, can you say, I have autonomy and choice over when I am most productive? And I don't have to be in line with the kind of whipping that says it is morning, and in morning you rise, whether you have something to do or not. There is a rhythm that you need to be in, that is a collective rhythm, and it's really a collective oppression, that says you have to do this certain thing, and that your value is based on your ability to produce. And so you were starting to push against and saying, this doesn't make sense. My worth isn't based on what time I get up and work. My sense of, did I do what I needed to do today, is based on my own rhythm. It's based on what my body is telling me. It's based on what I know about the amount of work. But when you're in a system, so let's take slavery, and we know that it exists, and we'll put it where it belongs as part of the story. But even in our modern work system, right, is this whole 9 to 5 idea, right? That you work from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You do what the collective does. So then if someone's an entrepreneur, or they're wired that way, then they're all of a sudden going, well, I don't want to work in a box, in a cubicle. I don't want to. So I want to give women, especially Black women, the freedom to do what little Ashley was doing, that now Dr. Ashley is trying to live into, the freedom to say, I don't have to be a part of the herd. And I don't need anyone to tell me who I am and how I work. And I can actually think outside of the box that I've been placed in. And a friend of mine, Ines Velasquez McBride, always asks, and I don't know if this is original to her, but for me it is, we don't want to be complicit to our own oppression. We do not want to be complicit to our own oppression. And what that basically means in the context of this conversation is, in what ways am I agreeing with the oppression that causes me to feel that I am a worker, I need to be up, everything needs to be perfect, and it's this beat down that I'm even doing to myself. And then as Black women, we have the system of oppression that's doing that to us. Then in family, we have that matriarch responsibility and burden that's coming up on us. And then in work, we have this challenge of, are we good enough? That's coming on us. The last thing we need is to also be the voice that says, get up, you better get to work. It's a violent thought. It's a violent system. And we get to break it.
See, and this is why I feel like we needed to have this conversation publicly, right? Because you and I were talking about this privately.
Yeah.
I've been in school. I know other powerful, Black women. I know lots of people, and no one was having this conversation around being told to get up at a certain time is a violent thought to yourself because it's built-in oppression, even in modern day. I was like, what? When you told me that, and I sat down with it, I was like,
yeah.
To be honest, this sounds crazy, but if I felt like my whole life, in a sense, made sense, right? Because I have always been that person where, I was reprimanded at work for not being happy in the morning, for not being smiley. I was reprimanded for, getting things done in very short amount of time at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I have learned, like, I'm in Japan right now. It is 12:24 a.m. and I am wired and I'm excited.
Yes,
And I have learned to be a night owl, right? And that's where I'm, to be honest, most productive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to kind of hear all these things, you're like, oh, that's why that happened. And this is why that happened. And just to hear it just like where it comes from, and just to know, it just, for me, it just validates that I'm not crazy, because I've always felt crazy. I've always felt different, because everyone else seems to be doing okay, but I'm like, y'all feel okay, but y'all don't feel. But I had this inside me, like, this, I've always had these journey, like, this doesn't make sense. Like, there's jokes, with my friends and family. Actually, not a morning person, but I'm like the only non-morning person. I'm like, y'all all like getting up, being excited, in the morning. So to hear you say, it's like, okay, all right, like, I'm not doing anything wrong, I guess.
Yeah, and I want to affirm in you and in anyone who's watching this, any Black woman who needs to just let her shoulders drop and let herself accept and be kind to the parts of her that feels different or feels judged because of her difference, that I want to really encourage us to bring some compassion and self-love and kindness to ourselves. There's a Superwoman complex, right? Which is, that schema has been, it has been out for a long time in terms of the research and in terms of incredible women and men who have really influenced that conversation about, there's this idea that Black women can do anything and you just keep piling it on them and they're so strong, they can be, birthing a baby and work in the fields. Like, that schema started somewhere, again, because we were people who were to produce laborers and to labor at the same time. But then you have on the other side is this angry Black woman schema that, what's wrong with you? Why are you upset? Not everyone gets that doesn't come upon each woman, Black woman, but there are parts of us that really get frustrated when we feel like it narrows, we're always being narrowed in upon. And I think that's what's happening with you, is that you discovered a part of yourself. You discovered something in your own body, in your own mind, and your emotions. And you were in a system trying to be able to navigate that system while trying to be a little more of yourself. And the system isn't designed for you to be more of yourself. The system is for you to follow the herd, and the system is for you to, right? And so if you come in and don't have the best attitude, which that's, you could be working on that, but there's something in general that says, coming in, working with incredible sense of joy first thing in the morning it is an avatar. It's a model of the type of person, the type of woman you need to be, and you have to squeeze into that mold. And what does it look like to say, and we don't always have this luxury, what does it look like to know in our bodies that the morning is not the rhythm for you necessarily, to then check yourself on how you're treating others and yourself in the morning so that you can heal relationships, but also say, as a Black woman, I have the autonomy, the agency, the freedom to start exploring what it looks like to start to communicate to people that this is who I am. I am not like the mold. And I want to explain to you, the work will get done. It will get done better and faster than most of your other folks. But in the mornings, I just may need a little spaciousness to get ramped up because I'm not wired that way. And that way, the anger that a lot of us hold and the frustration that a lot of us hold that comes out in really inappropriate times is actually, we're actually holding hands with it, and we're actually able to give it a voice that is more connective than causes conflict. And so you find that this whole angry Black woman idea is whenever we just say, I'm not down for the system, then all of a sudden we're an angry Black woman. So I think there's opportunity on both sides for us to hold hands with our frustration and with who we really are, be able to recognize in ourselves the beauty, the brilliance, the brokenness that we have, and be able to give language to it. But then also the systems, we need to dismantle systems of oppression, especially in the workplace, that says you have to look a certain way. I mean, people have told us we couldn't, I'm in the Army as an Army Reserve chaplain. There were decades, it's in the recent decade that locks were allowed. In the workplace, it's in a recent decade that braids was not a cause of conflict and disruption. So even being told how to wear your hair, of course, I'm gonna feel a way about that. But the system is set up so that we line up and we get to work and we keep the system going versus learn how to keep myself going. And you see in the statistics that Black women, from a health perspective, are also hurting, dying at a faster rate, high blood pressure, all of the different things that comes with being laborers and creating a whole system of labor by producing laborers.
And I have two things. Then I'm gonna move to like the part. So what can we do about it? So the
Yeah.
one thing that I heard that you say was like Black women are dying. Can't say are dying, because I remember seeing a meme on social media that says, Black don't crack, right? So like Black women, we don't look like we're aging, but inside of us we're much older than other races are because
Yeah.
of stress and because of all the labor. So I find it very interesting, and I'm not quite sure how we can look so young on the outside, but in our bodies be so old because of all the stress. So do you have any response, or do you have any research around that, or I need to do some Googling?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I'm
not quite
really moved by that notion of looking one way but having a totally different experience on the inside.
right.
And this relationship between stress and our health in African American women, it's not fully formed and understood, because we don't always talk about and know for ourselves some of the stress and this and how to cope with our stress. Um, and it is historical, and it is known that we experience a disproportionately high rate of really adverse health conditions, it's especially heart conditions, which I won't go there, but just think of that we have a disproportionately high rate of heart issues. Um, and so I would say to that, gosh, where do we begin? I'll say a couple things. One is thank God for melanin, right? So God just was like, and then in addition to them being beautiful and brilliant, I am going to bless them with an extra dose of melanin. And so we have that's a natural part of our giftedness, is to have that connection with our skin and our beauty. What's really painful is our awareness that what we hold inside, what we numb, what we suppress, is actually forming. It's forming conflict within our bodies, within our minds, within our spirits, within our relationships. And so I would say a couple of things. One is how we look and what we're feeling, right? In our heart place, in our bodies, etc. We need to really own what is real versus what we project. And so, I mean, you have a doctorate degree. There's a certain level of showing up with your armor, showing up so that you can prove that you belong in that room or prove that you belong in that workplace where there are mostly men, mostly people of, primarily white people or primarily working in a white institution. Um, and so there's a lot of effort that we put in order to just show up and then to be seen and then to be valued and to be affirmed and to be validated. And so there's a lot of effort that we put in on the externals. And so I really encourage people, based on even what you're saying, to really start that inner work, which is why you and I have these conversations, is am I finding spaces where I am doing the inner work, which is reality, not how I show up, not the briefcase, not the suited armor, but am I showing up in a space where I can say, I'm tired, I'm weary, I'm worn out, I'm underappreciated, I need love, I I need to be held, I need to be seen. Do we have those spaces? And I think that's why we're having the conversation is if we don't know what reality is, if we've bought into the delusion or even the addiction that I am my performance, I am my title, I am who I have on my arm, I am how much is in my bank account. If we buy into that story, we've missed the opportunity to find out who we really are. And that is the greatest violence that we can cause upon ourselves and the world as well, is to not connect with the truest version of ourselves. And we got to dig through not just the 400-year history. And if you're, if you have indigenous blood beyond before that, but just literally just even starting with your most recent history and looking at mom and say, if I just follow what mom did, how mom behaved, how mom feels in her body, am I willing to carry that on to the next generation? Am I willing to model mom's way of coping with reality, inward reality? Am I willing to replicate and pass it on to the next generation? And if you're not, it's time to do some inner work. And you're worth the inner work.
Okay, so I have one more question, then we're going to shift into okay, so how do we start that inner work, right? So a
Yes.
lot of the things you're talking about is inside of us, right? It's not outside, it's
Yeah.
all internal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most people know that I'm not really comfortable with my emotions. That's something that I've struggled with for years and have been working on that internally, as part of my own personal and spiritual development.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I didn't know I was carrying was that I feel and have felt guilty.
Yeah.
So when I lived in California, I lived in Los Angeles, California. I was making
Yeah.
really good money. I was working for Mercedes-Benz, R&D at
Mm-hmm.
the time. And I was working on, some entrepreneurial things, some other stuff, but I just didn't feel like I didn't have any kids, right? And at the time I was single, but I just didn't feel that I should have to be the person to like come home and work. I mean, work at work, come home and work on my business, and then still have to cook and clean, do all these other things. It was just me. So I didn't have any help. So I remember hiring a housekeeper. I remember ordering a delivery service where my food was delivered.
Yep.
And I remember calling my mom, to be honest, almost in tears because I felt like I was frivolously just like shoving money out. I was like, why do I feel guilty
Yeah.
for help? Like, can we talk
Mm-hmm.
about that a little bit in terms of mindfulness and rest? That level of
Yeah.
guilt? Is that, I know a lot of women have that, but is there something to be said specifically for Black women in that area?
Yeah, yeah. And I hate to be a broken record, but it's kind of, I often ask myself, where did I learn this? Where did I learn this behavior? Where did I learn that it isn't okay to spend money on things that I just want, right? Where did I learn that? Where did I learn that? Now I can always keep going back to the 400-year story, but I really want to pull us in and say, okay, where did I learn? Where did I first learn from someone that if I like this lotion and this lotion costs $25 when I can get the $3 lotion, where did I learn that I need to choose the $3 lotion? Because doing that sends a message either to the tribe, it sends a message to the family, it sends a message to the world. It's something that is disallowed, because in some way I'm now saying, again, stepping outside of the herd, right? That I'm actually worth, first of all, I can afford it, it's my money. Yeah, it's my money,
Yep.
I'm worth it, and I want to buy this particular lotion, right? So a friend was talking about that during COVID, she's just buying more expensive lotions because it just makes her feel like she has some level of value and worth and autonomy and control. And
Right.
it's her way of just loving on herself. And it's $25. So where did you learn that? Where was it modeled for you? And the shame and guilt that lives on the inside of us is basically, it has a message. And usually the message is, if you do that, you're saying you're more than the rest of us. And what we do, what our people do is we sacrifice, we work hard, we save our pennies, we choose things that are less than. That's what our people do. So when you don't do that, you're saying you're better than, different than, outside of our people. And if you keep going backwards, you'll see we don't do that because it is better to give than receive. Sometimes we take some of those scriptures and we really make them come against us. So I think shame, guilt, anxiety, fear, um, frustration, resentment, when you locate that, when I locate that, my first question is, first of all, just be tender to it, right? Be compassionate. But then the second thing is, where did I learn specifically that having food delivered because I'm tired at the end of the day and I don't want to cook? Where did I learn that it's not okay to give myself space to breathe and to invest in someone else's business so that I can have an extra hour or two? Where did I learn that? And a person will come to mind or a message will come to mind.
I have several messages and people that came to mind. Like I can, like, asking that question is kind of like, okay. And that's what I kind of want to transition into, because we'll understand the history, the 400-year history. Then we understand, our models of what we saw in our generationals, like who raised us and kind of what we saw. We touch on the workplace, right? And kind of how that's its own system, right? So we have all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But the real question is, Black women need rest too. It wasn't
Yeah.
shown to us. We weren't developed for that, right? And you're saying, what I'm hearing, at least you say, is that we need to start with the inner work. So how do we get to a place where I don't know how to rest? How do I start that process? Is it with asking that question? Like, how do we get to the bridge
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
resting?
Yeah. So awareness is always the first step. So even just what you just said is the first step. If every person on this call and everyone watching this video in the replay or alive can just say, I want to own, I want to hold space to admit, I don't know how to rest. We don't need to blame anyone. We're not trying to blame some slave master. We're not trying to blame mama and them. We're just taking responsibility. That is the first step, is awareness. I'm aware I don't know how to rest. If you gave me a full day by myself, I would go crazy because there'd be all these voices saying, you're not doing anything today? You're just gonna sit down and lay in bed and haven't taken a shower yet? Like, what? That I just want to be aware of that. Second is I want us to be tender to it, right? So if I told you, Ashley, what's going on is it predates you. It's years, centuries before you. And not only is that, but you saw it modeled in your current life. And there's a system that perpetuates your sense of your value being based on production, being able to produce. If I told you that, or I told someone you love that, you wouldn't say, girl, you better get to work. You would say, oh my gosh, girl, no wonder you're so tired. No,
Right.
no wonder you're so tired. So there would be a tenderness that
Right.
comes, but we don't always give ourselves that tenderness. We don't always say, oh, you don't know how to rest. Well, girl, you better figure out because ain't nobody coming to help you. Like all that stuff
Right.
is repeating the violence, repeating the oppression. So
Right.
I'm aware, and then I look at it with tenderness. No wonder you're so tired, baby girl. No wonder. And then the question around where it came from or where you learned it, the only reason why I bring that question up, and you don't even have to do that, a therapist will be really good in helping you go back. I don't invite
Mhm.
a lot of people to spend a lot of time doing that.
Okay.
But the awareness of it is important because you can at least start to say, this is how it shows up in my life currently. So if I'm being tender to, you don't know how to rest, and wow, no wonder you're so tired. You really need some nice candles and a good long bath. That you're actually saying, oh, I saw that represented in my heart and my life, and I keep doing that to myself, and I don't want to pass it on. That's part of the tenderness. I don't want you living there and digging around your family history. I just want you to be honest that, wow, no wonder. Oh, girl, you can only do what you have seen. Were you going to say something, Dr. Ashley?
Yes. So to be honest, you answered one of the questions that I did not have an answer for.
Yeah.
Um, so for those of you who do not know, I have a therapist. I actually got one while I was here in Japan, just because my grandmother passed away while I was over here, and
Mm,
COVID happened, and then I wasn't able to go home. So I needed someone to process and talk to,
yeah.
and I'm very excited. I found a Black female therapist in Japan from the South. Okay, she just like me. I'm just very excited and proud.
Yes.
Um, I will drop her information for anyone who is open to therapy and does that. But one of the questions she asked me was, because we were doing some exercises and I was going through a lot. And so she was inviting me to self-care, which to me was last year was kind of like the beginning of mindfulness and rest. One of the things I was doing was like taking baths and lighting candles. And I was like, this to me doesn't make any sense. Like, who does this? Like, not judging y'all, I was judging me, right? But then I started it, and then like I got addicted. Like all I do now is like once a week is I take these baths, and I'm literally in the bath for like hour
Yeah.
and a half, 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And one of the questions she asked me, she was like, "What are you doing? What are you not doing? What are you thinking?" She's like, she didn't say doing. What are you thinking while you're in there? And to be honest, I could not tell her. I was like, I'm
Mm,
just chilling. I was like, I told her sometimes I listen to music, sometimes I sit in silence. Like I don't know. I just know that I don't know what I'm consciously thinking. I
yeah.
just know that when I do it, I feel better. And when I don't do it, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you telling me like, be tender, no wonder you're tired. It makes sense now. It makes sense of
Hmm.
why I just needed to zen
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you. So thank you for that answer, right? I know what to
Yeah.
tell her during our day.
Yeah. And that is the revolutionary act, right? So we come back to that really seminal quote and some of the seminal work that's now emerging about Black women and rest and mindfulness and meditation and prayer, um, and self-care. It's such a popular word that we're like, yeah, self-care, I need to do self-care, but it's revolutionary for you as a Black woman to lay your body in a tub, to close the door to the world, to light a candle, to be in the presence of God, and to let your mind float without someone saying, you need to do this, you need to be here, we need you. You're not the savior of anyone, but you being able to tenderly say, come, girl, we are going to lay ourselves down and we're just going to be. We're just going to be. That is the most loving thing anyone can do for themselves. And that's going to look different for everyone. So after you've done that awareness piece, I'm aware that I struggle with rest, or I'm aware I struggle with anger. I'm aware, whatever the awareness is. And then the second part is, girl, no wonder you're angry because you've been dealing with this particular partner situation. And no wonder you can't rest because it's been passed down to you and you've never seen it modeled. No wonder. Once we're tender with ourselves, then there's a sense of, what's the most loving thing I can do, right? In order to move towards the parts of me that leans into the internal freedom that I'm looking for. This whole conversation, rest is revolutionary. It's all about how can we become the most free, the most authentic, truest version of ourselves. And just being, whatever that looks like to you, for Dr. Dash, it's being in a tub with a candle, letting herself have this embodied experience. For you, it's something else. And here's the thing, what is revolutionary about it is it's again going against history. It's going against your family. It's going against her laying up in that tub with that candle, being herself, thinking about nothing, doing nothing, just being in her essence is resistance. And what happens is resistance comes against it because you have all of these things saying you are not allowed and worthy of laying up in that tub with not a care in the world. That's not what you are worth and valued at. And so we have to be aware first of what it is that brings us life, what's the most loving thing that we can do. And we need to put ourselves on the schedule and protect it the way we would protect someone we love. And often we don't protect the things that bring us rest and renewal the same way we will show up in doing it for somebody else. You may draw the water for somebody to lay in and forget to draw your own water, right? You may pay for someone to get their hair done and then forget that, did I put myself on the schedule? Oh, I need to get my hair done. So what does it look like? Asking yourself, what's the most loving thing I can do in this moment? The same way you would treat a child who is harmed, anxious, afraid. You wouldn't say, you better get yourself to work. You'd say, what's wrong? What's hurting? What's the most loving thing I can do for this child to go back inward in the most freest place and way that they can be?
So, first of all of that. I love every word you just said. I like, to be honest, there's something about me, you telling me that sitting in the tub is revolutionary. I love it. Like, I'm all here for it. Okay. Because I spent a lot of money on some candles to get them shipped to Japan just to light them while I take baths. And I have to be honest, I'm not feeling guilty about it. Not at all.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
in the
yeah,
least.
yeah.
So, I want to transition and really have a conversation, I guess, on a larger scale where for myself, like, I have lots of like internal thoughts that kind of keep me from like really
Mm,
getting the rest and being more mindful, right? We talked about
yeah,
morning routines, but to be honest, it's just me, right? So although my thoughts are very strong, it's a lot
yeah.
easier for me to lay in a tub for a couple hours, right? I'm single, I don't
Hmm.
have any kids, I'm in Japan, like no one can really get to me. It's COVID, we shut down. It's the
Yeah,
perfect time for me to be on this journey. But what
yeah,
about people? What about Black women who have partners and they have kids, or they
yeah,
have other things? They just can't be like Dr. Dash and be like, oh, sit in tub. What
yeah.
does that look like for them?
Yeah, yeah. I was just having a conversation with women of color, not only Black women, and we were talking about this sense of how can you, what I heard, how can you take what you already do and turn it into a practice of love, a ritual of love, right? So for the busy mother who only barely gets a shower, um, because she's serving everyone. How can you take that and turn it into a ritual of love? And it may just be as that water is falling on you, that you're taking, breathing is it's so underrated, but science shows connecting with your breath and giving yourself just 3 rounds, literally 5 seconds each, of breathing in deeply and breathing all the way out slowly is one of the most healing things you can do for your brain and for your body. So, what would it look like for a busy mother, a busy Black mom who has the world at her bathroom door waiting for what's next, to say, as this water falls on me, I take 3 deep breaths and I just say, I am loved, I am valuable, I am beautiful. You're going to take the shower anyway. You're going to brush your teeth anyway. You're washing the dishes anyway. How can you take something that's mundane and turn it into something precious and holy and sacred? How can you take the drive to the grocery store while the kids are like, bah? How can you turn that into, I'm just breathing, I'm learning how to be in my body, I'm checking where I have stress, and I'm just breathing and letting my shoulders drop. So take what is mundane and turn it into a moment of healing, of breathing, if that's all you do, slowing your breath down. That's what I would encourage. The second thing is, this is something I gotta say before, because I know we gotta get to questions and stuff, is asking for help, right? So you were like, I'm gonna get the food service. I'm gonna get someone to come and clean my house. That was your way of saying, I'm inviting someone else to take a burden off of me. So I wonder, what would it look like for a Black mother or a Black busy working woman who's always running around doing stuff for people, to look someone in the eye and say, you know, this week I haven't had a chance to just be and rest. I need help. I need someone to come and take my kids just for 15 minutes. I need to just read one page in a book a day. If you can't read a whole book and you keep beating yourself up, guilt, shame, anxiety, fear, frustration that you can't read a book, maybe your goal is, I'm going to read one page a day. And that's your commitment to yourself. And then how can you ask for help? Honey, when we wake up in the morning, I literally am going to go outside. I'm going to walk around the block once. I won't even be gone 15 minutes, but I need help because I can tell you last week I didn't even breathe. I didn't feel my own self standing, walking, being grounded, and I need help. And that's a revolutionary thing to say I need and to add something on the end of that. That is a revolutionary act for many people, especially people who are busy helping others and carrying burdens.
So I feel like that's very powerful in terms of like turning, you said, what I heard is turning the mundane into a sacred experience. So like I've never
Yeah.
even, like I can do that on the train when I have to go into the office. Like I can just, dial in for like, the 10 minutes I'm on the train, where
Mm-hmm.
I can't do anything anyways. I'm either sitting or standing. So you can get, what I'm hearing is you can get rest and mindfulness anywhere. It doesn't have to be sitting in a tub. It doesn't have to be what we think are traditional ways.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
get it in any way.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. This is
Yeah.
great. So
Yeah.
I so I want to open up the chat for questions. Or if you want to show live, you can as well. Just know we're on Facebook Live. So if you don't want to share your face, then that's perfectly fine. In
Yes.
the chat, they can't see the chat. So if you want to type in your question, I don't have to say your name, in the chat. So if you have any questions, you want to raise your hand or type in the chat, let me know, because I feel like is and like an amazing conversation. I've learned so much more because we started this conversation privately, but to kind of have it publicly, you've taken me to a deeper
Yeah.
level, and I think
Yeah.
that's amazing. So as though folks are typing, um, and if you need to
Actually, I
unmute your
want to mention something while you're taking a look on Facebook as well as here in our Zoom room. Is I also want to honor that there are people um, who have walked into and have given themselves the space to do this. That there are, and we must honor that there is an aunt in my family. She's no longer with us, but that she actually went against the grain and she was able to really start to be present to what it is that brings her peace, brings her joy. And she's learned, may not have known, the question that I ask all of you is, what is the most loving thing I can do for myself today? That she became that person in my life where it was like, there's that aunt that is always traveling, or she's always, and it was her way of being present in her own body, which we are not always taught. But there's some of us on this call, on Facebook Live, where we have started to just look at ourselves and see, I am beautiful. I am Black and I'm beautiful. And start to honor our body, start to honor our mental health, that there are people who do that. So I want to make sure that we're not a monolith, right? So I don't want to speak of Black women in these broad sweeping terms, that
right.
we are not a monolith, that there are many of us who, whether it's through trouble, trial, sickness, trauma, we came to a place where we said, I am worth more than what the system has put me through. I am worth so much more than what my family heritage has done or has been victim to. And so I want to honor every woman, every Black woman who has become awakened to her own beauty and brilliance and is able to pass that on to the next generation because they're watching us, right?
Right.
And they're modeling what we do. And so I just want to honor that, just because when people speak of folks across the African diaspora, that there can often be this idea that we are one people, we all act the same way. And I don't want to perpetuate that idea that all Black women are tired and need rest and all that.
Right.
Um, but I certainly know that all people have experienced some semblance of tiredness and need rest, and I want to honor that.
So what we're going to do really quickly is I'm going to talk about the different strategies or tools I've learned in terms of mindfulness and rest
Yeah.
really quickly, just to kind of give some of the people on the call some ideas if they need a place to start. You've given them several, but I want to reiterate that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a little surprise. One of my favorite things that Brenda does, she knows what it is already. We're going to begin with that. So if you guys have any questions, definitely put them in the chat on Zoom. If you're on Facebook Live, I can't see you live, so I apologize if I don't get your questions. But I will respond to them. If I don't have an answer, I'll email Brenda and we'll get you a response. We'll get you what you need. So we talked about mindfulness and rest. We mentioned several different ways you can do that. So I just want to kind of, list that out really quickly. And if you have anything else to add, let me know. So I know just from our personal experience, sitting in silence, right? That was one way to rest, right?
Yeah.
Breathing. So you mentioned breathing techniques. That's
Yes.
just something that's really simple and easy for anyone and everyone to really do, right?
Yes.
Meditation.
Yep.
Right? That's an option for people that we chatted about. I know when my sorority sister sent me a gratitude jar, with a notepad. So I've actually been doing that in the morning. I write like three things I'm grateful for, and I put it in the jar, right?
Beautiful.
So gratitude, and journaling.
Yep.
Journaling.
Yes.
My all-time favorite, sitting in a bathtub, right?
Yes.
Lighting a candle. And for me, I'm not sure if this counts, but traveling as a form of supportive health. Does that count? Does traveling count? Okay. So I guess it depends.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, because the thing is, so now that we admit I need rest, I want rest is going to be even a more revolutionary thing to say to our own souls, right? You may need something that you don't feel like you deserve or that you can actually go and make happen. And so, but what it is we're connecting with our values and connecting with our deepest sense of self. And so it's, what would I believe? I was sharing this with a student the other day. What would I believe about myself if I wasn't taught to believe a certain thing? And that's what we're talking about here, right? And so this is, what would I believe about myself? What would I do if I wasn't told what I should do? If I was free of shoulds and free of the have-tos and free of the burdens, not irresponsible, because you're a mama, please show up and take care of your kids, right? Not like, I'm gonna have self-care. Like, but if I could do motherhood my way, free of this should, right? I had a friend who said the most freeing day of her life as a mother was learning that she didn't have to wash her children's clothes for them to feel whole. That when she actually delegated out to some tasks that she could delegate out and support actually another woman of color in her business to come in once a week and to just gather all the clothes and whatever. And I think there was a couple of things that she was like, I want to do that part. But she said the most powerful thing was, I want to not have to do laundry every week. And I can actually spend time with my children if I'm not doing this one thing. Now that's her thing. And to someone else, they may be like, nobody's gonna be touching my stuff. And that's yours. But for her, this was a should, again, that she saw modeled. I have to wash the clothes, and that way I am in my role as a mother and I am taking care of my kids. When really, you washing the clothes, you're not spending time with your children, for her. So for you've come to the place where exploring the world, exploring cultures, finding out what that culture and that exploration does in you and for you is true to you. It brings you alive and it creates a healthier version of you. So yes, can we say to ourselves, what brings me alive? And if I was free of the shoulds, list the shoulds. As a good mother, I should have food on the table at 5. As a good mother, I should be happy every time my children come home. As a good mother, I should. When you list out those shoulds and you realize, well, actually, who said that? Who gets to tell me what kind of mother I get to be?
Right.
I want to be the kind of mother who takes my kids to museums and who
Mm,
teaches them in this different way, and who travels the world once a year and take my children with me, no matter who says it's safe or not. This is what feels alive. This is what brings me alive. And
right,
I'm going to commit to what brings me alive versus being commit to what people think I should do. And
right.
that is a revolutionary act because you're going against what the system says you need to be, and putting you in your place. You're now
Mm.
creating your own sense of truth. And I think that's powerful.
So you're saying reading, right, as an act, and then we didn't mention this, but we exercising obviously is a form of
Oh yeah. Yeah.
mindfulness. And what I'm also hearing you say is that releasing what you should do, right, is a form of mindfulness and rest. Like if you
Oh,
replace the should with what you want, right, to relieve the pressure, that actually could be more powerful than some of like the other things on the list. Because
if
the
you
pressure,
can if you can literally say, Dr. Dashley, I feel like I should be doing this, and it is causing me stress, and it feels oppressive, it feels heavy. This should is actually depleting me of joy. It is causing me to be someone who's difficult to live with. If you can just recognize that a should is in the driver's seat, you're in an incredibly powerful place. Because the thing
yes,
that I've seen with my coaching clients is that women seek permission. Like you're saying, is it okay to do? It's okay to do whatever you know in your heart and it feels good to you and the spirit within you to bring, and that causes no harm. If it feels good to you, it causes no harm. It glorifies the God that created you with such love and excitement and is eager to see you come alive.
right,
And a lot of us are living with shoulds. I should get a degree, or I should um, you know, want this particular thing. I should be driving this kind of car. I should buy a house versus renting a house. Y'all, the most freeing moment, now I've owned a house and I joyfully sold that house. One of the freest moments for me was when I realized, as a woman of immigrant descent, proud of it, proud of my Caribbean heritage, I felt that I should have a house because I should be bought into the American dream. Y'all, I travel too much to own anybody's house, to have any yard. Like, because then that should drove me to get the gorgeous condo in DC. I loved it when I had it, but I also knew deep down inside I was getting it because I thought it's something that I had to do to live into a narrative. And
right.
when I sold that place, it was the freest thing I've ever done. And I realized a should was driving even a good thing to own a piece of
Mm,
America. And so for me, that's an important thing. I will be renting and I will be Airbnb and I may buy again one day. But I feel so free
mm.
to say that I don't have to be driven by that. And I see that there's some chat. There's a lot of chats
Yeah.
on Facebook Live too, by the way. We're so glad y'all are here.
Oh,
What do you
thank you,
see,
Facebook. I
Ashley?
haven't been able to do it because we'll hear it twice because we're live. Um, but I have someone said my mother and aunties had not rested. My favorite aunt and mother talked and ate desserts and table on Friday evening, but they are napping in the table and wake up at the same time. So
Mm,
rest looks
mm.
different for everyone. So I know we have to come to a close. So before we get off, okay, before we get off, we have to do this, okay? Because this is my favorite thing. Okay, Brenda does amazing things. You first of all, just I want everyone to give a round of applause. Put some some emojis down, some fire. Like let's just celebrate Brenda just for the amazingness that she has just been dropping, because she's been dropping knowledge. Like she's always, I'm so glad to have met you, to have you in my life and have access to you. But she does amazing things. So one of my favorite things she does outside of prayer, because she got some life-changing prayers too, but she does this exercise. She does exercises. And one of my favorite exercises are visualizations, right? Because it just gets you, at least for me, it gets me like excited and ready, right? So I have a couple things in my mind, but I asked Brenda to let the spirit move her. Do you have a particular visualization in mind?
Oh, now I'm curious what you have in mind.
Okay.
Um, yes. What do you
Okay.
have in mind? Just so I can be aware, but I definitely have something that is in mind, and I'm happy to do that.
So the space that I think I want to come from, right, is I want to have a visualization for Black women, right? For them to know or to see, right? Because we're doing visualization to see what like their highest good is if they got the rest that they needed. How do you
Yeah,
guys,
yeah.
are you guys down for that? Can you put something in the chat? Like, is that something you guys want to do? I feel like that would be something super excited to see. You know what? My life isn't, my life is good. Like, I'm not going to put out there anybody's life is bad. But if you were resting, if you were at your optimum level of mental clarity because you were rested, mindful, what could your life really be? I would love for us to have a visualization around that because I think it might surprise people based on what they see. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
if you're open to that one, unless you have something better, because I'm open. That's what
No,
I think.
I'm here to co-create with you. And I do want to say I read this thing from, and we're going to do that now. Yes, we will do that. I read something and I really love her work. She's her name is Cole Arthur Riley, a Black woman, at Black Liturgies on Instagram.
Okay.
So just look up at Black Liturgies, and she has these different prayers where she tells you to inhale and say one thing and exhale and say something else. And she said something that I think is important to this conversation, and I want to start our visualization with this. So just for those of you who are not familiar with visualization, I want you to know that our ancestors, no matter what shade or hue of Black you are, my friend, we all come from home, right? Africa as home, and then brought across to different places from South America to North America to the Caribbean. No matter what hue you are, you come from a people whose imagination kept them alive. And I want you to remember from where you come, what is in your DNA. We talked about the oppressive things that still lurk on the cellular level. But I want you to know when you listen to spirituals, when you listen to the songs that my grandmother would sing, when you listen to the songs that our great grandmothers passed on in their broken dialects, they had an incredible sense of imagination and it kept them alive. And not only did it keep them alive, it helped them to thrive in situations that were inhumane and that would have destroyed any other person. We see this with our Jewish sisters and brothers in Auschwitz. We see this with our Native American indigenous sisters and brothers as they continue to fight and live on their land as refugees on their own land, as prisoners, as hostages in your own land. We see that our imagination, being able to see more than we're experiencing, transforms us. And what we imagine becomes a reality. Whether it's Kamala Harris being the Vice President of the United States, or you, Dr. Ashley Dash, having a PhD or any of the wonderful, beautiful, not just your accomplishments, but you being able to even have a conversation about rest, you are an answer to your ancestors' prayers. You are an answer. And what they used was their imagination to see themselves and to see others ahead of them in ways that were more life-giving than the reality they had. So Cole Arthur Riley, she talks about perfectionism and she talks about all these different things as a form of self-hatred. And she invites us to have mercy on ourselves, that we don't have to be perfect to be loved. And I want to add to that we weren't made to be perfect. We were made to imagine what would happen if God, in God's infinite beauty, could imagine something beautiful through us versus living to the expectations of society or the world. So your imagination is one of the most underutilized parts of you. And we can, if I say right now, imagine an orange, go ahead and do it. Imagine an orange. You can see it. And your mind, science tells us, and I'll do this quickly, doesn't know the difference between the reality you're living and the imagination that you project in your heart and your mind. So I want to invite you to not see visualization or imagination as an enemy or that's of something that belongs to some other culture or some other religion. Imagine imagination and visualization as a God-given opportunity for you to live into something beyond your lived reality that can, over time, become your reality. So if you're willing, would you please put your feet on the floor? Or if you're laying, if you want to lay down, listen, this is about rest. So get yourself comfortable. We're only going to do this for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to encourage you to practice this on your own. So be very still. And I would invite you to just take 3 deep breaths at your own pace. In and out. In and out. Would you just check your forehead and your eyebrows and your cheeks and your jaw and your shoulders? These are the places where we hold tension. And would you, as you're taking these deep, slow breaths, would you check those areas and let them soften and relax? And now I want to invite us, taking slow, deep breaths. All you have to do in this space, friends, is to be. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to posture. You don't have to produce. You just have to be. You get to be. Now I want you to imagine yourself having the space to do whatever it is that brings you life. I want you to imagine what brings you life. It could be a tub. It could be taking a bath in a tub. It could be going for a walk. And if you can't see yourself, sometimes when we visualize, we can't see ourselves doing the thing. I want you to feel, what would it feel like if you were free to be and do anything you needed and wanted to be this weekend? What would it feel like? So as you are imagining yourself being whatever it is you want to be, doing whatever it is that brings you life, I'm going to be silent for a second, and I want you to just say this in your heart and your mind while you look at that picture, or as you think of that thought. I want you to say, I am worthy of rest. I am worthy of rest. I am worthy of rest. I want you to just make that picture stronger. Imagine yourself doing something that brings you life without interruption, without any shoulds. It could be something that you do on a regular basis or something that you want to do, something that you've never done. I want you to really get close into that picture. And I want you to say to yourself, I am worthy of love. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of love. And taking another deep breath, I invite you to just take again, try to see if you can find a picture or even just the idea of the image, right? So I'm imagining myself just taking a long, interrupted walk in a country that I've never been in, and I'm feeling safe, I'm feeling spacious, I'm feeling free. I want you to just end saying on a deep breath, I am worthy of taking care of myself. I am worthy of taking care of myself. When you're ready, if you'd open your eyes, and if you type in the chat or on Facebook Live, what was the image that came to mind? What was the feeling? Even you can think there was a resistance that came, but I want you to just tell me, what was it like to be in that moment of just even trying to imagine yourself being in a space of self-love and care? What was it like?
So I've done this several times, so I can share what it's like, but I want to give someone else the opportunity to. So I'm going to check Facebook Live really quickly. I'm going to give it a second. So before I respond. So if someone wants to
Yeah,
type in the chat, that'd be great.
yeah, and I'll take a look there as well. Yeah, the wonderful thing about the imagination is it is a muscle that we get to really strengthen. And over time, you'll find that we are already using our imagination, and we're often using it in the reverse. So we're often using our imagination to imagine the worst possible thing coming to pass. And so I often invite my clients, my friends, my own self, my own soul to imagine the thing that I want to live into, and to start to use my headspace as a way of really creating an image that I pull my life towards. Crystal says that she saw herself writing and it was relaxing and such a free feeling, right? And so Crystal, I would invite you then. So once you imagine without shoulds, without have tos, because even some of our restful activities, we can get into shoulds. I should want to take, exercise, and I should do these things. And that's why we don't do them, because anything that feels like a should is a burden. And again, we don't want to be oppressed. We don't want to feel that sense of oppression. And so we often do the things that we don't want to, we often resist the things that feels like a should. So Crystal, I would invite you, if I was coaching you or supporting you, is to say, how can you this week take one tiny step in making that imagination a reality? And we come up with really big, wide goals. And I usually like to bring people really down. Dr. Benjamin Hardy has a book called Tiny Habits, right? Atomic Habits. So how can we take even a big goal? I'm going to write every day for 30 minutes. Don't do that to yourself. Your brain
I love it.
needs little successes to give you a shot of dopamine. Otherwise, your brain thinks that anything that is new is a danger, and it will give you all the resistance. Procrastination, fear, anxiety is your brain saying you're trying to do something new, you're trying to be big and bad, and that means you're not safe and you're going to get eaten by a lion. So our brain doesn't know that you're just trying to take care of yourself. See, and that's the
Right.
power of the imagination. So I would invite Crystal, if she says write every day for 30 minutes, I would say, what does it look like to write one page 2 times a week, and to be back into that feeling of freedom that you had in your imagination? Give your brain that dopamine of success, that shot of you did it, versus this is so new that we're going to be afraid and we're going to procrastinate and talk ourselves out of it. What do you have, Dr. Ashley?
We have someone on Facebook who says she was on a secluded beach and she could feel like the breeze. And I'm like, I love water. So anything water related, I'm down.
Yeah, yeah,
What if you don't have, for example, let's say you are you want to be on a secluded beach, you want to feel
yeah,
a calm breeze, but
yeah,
you're landlocked.
yeah, yeah,
How do you do
yeah.
that?
So here's the wonderful thing about imagination and using the brain is our friend on Facebook had the experience of the beach and could feel the calming nature of the breeze without being there. So I would encourage her to sharpen that muscle to really, I mean, it's going to be powerful. It's what's powerful is what's happening that you don't know is happening. She just gave her brain and her body and her whole physiology something that it was probably crying out for. Secondly, there are apps where you can have the ocean sound going, right? So maybe as you're washing the dishes, you put in the earplugs and you have the ocean sound and you're just imagining yourself walking on a beach. There's also ways, I know when I lived in Los Angeles, I would say, oh, I live in LA, I'm going to go to the beach every day. Girl, that didn't happen. That was again, over making a goal that actually became a should, and it became oppressive. And then it was like, oh, now I'm not going to beach. I should feel bad. I'm not going to beach. So it was literally me putting on the schedule that once every month, once every other month, I'm going to go to a place that gives me that feeling. So it may be that you schedule in, where is it? And I encourage everyone who's listening, the feeling you had is the most important thing about what we just did. So Crystal said that she felt freedom and peace. And so being able to recreate that in your life may not require being on the beach, right? It may be that it is slowing down. It may be taking breaths. I feel greater peace and freedom as I take deeper breaths, as I spend some time in quiet in the morning, as I let my family know that I'm hurting. I actually feel like I exhale in these small ways.
So, oh my gosh, that's my favorite way, to do what we do. I just want to say again, thank you so much for saying yes, right? For being my friend and my sister and helping me personally, in the background do this and to be open to having this conversation publicly,
Yeah.
because Black women, I just really feel strongly that Black women need rest too. And just this conversation, I think, has been enlightening. And I've learned a lot personally. And now we have tools and strategies to figure out, okay, we know we need rest. We understand why it's so difficult for us to rest. But as we have the awareness now, how do we do it? And you've given us so many
Mm-hmm.
tools, including visualization, right? Which is very much what they say, God energy, right? Like out of the mind of
Mm-hmm.
God, right? So I am just very, very excited. And I just want to thank you for your time. Before we get off, there's one more person on the chat that says, she said, this was life changing for me as a mom, student, full-time worker, and business owner. Rest is not even in my vocabulary. Some ask me how I do it all, and I always think I don't know any other way, but I discovered things I can and will do to make sure I take care of me. Thank you. Yes, that's what we want. We want people to be able to get the help that they need, right? And to be able to rest until we get to a better equilibrium, right? And some of us have more time than others, more time, but today, no matter where you are, what stage, what location in the
Mm-hmm.
world,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully you have gotten, you know, the information, the awareness, and at least one tool you can use this week, right? Because we don't want to wait until, next week. We can use it today, tomorrow, so that we can figure out, even if it's only 30 seconds in the shower, right? Breathing exercise for us to rest. So Brenda, I'm going to give you the parting words. I just want to thank everyone who's watching right now with me on Zoom, everyone who's watching on Facebook Live. I appreciate your time. You could be doing a lot of other things, but you chose to be here. If you're watching the replay, I'm so excited that you've taken the opportunity to invest in yourself, right? And take this time for you, because we know when you take care of yourself, everything else will follow, right? So that's my spiel. Brenda, I'll let you kind of lead us. Are you muted?
All right. Yes. I want to say a couple things. Black women, you are brilliant. You are beautiful. You are the answer to our ancestors' prayers. This entire nation and the world is better because you're here. Your hair, the texture, your skin, whatever part you are on the scale of our hue, from very, very light that you can almost pass as white to so beautifully dark. Whatever you look like, whatever you have done, whatever you have not done, you are enough. And you make this world a better place. And without you, this world would be lacking in vigor and grace and beauty and strength. And so I want to honor your very existence and the way your body is formed. You are beautiful and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I want to encourage you, lastly, even rest can become work. So I want to encourage you to not put a burden on yourself, to find ways to rest. Drop down into your heart space, as Dr. Howard Thurman says. Center down and ask your heart, how can I best be in support and service of you today? And your heart always has an answer. Follow that. Not what the news says, not what the self-care experts say, not even what I may have said or Dr. Ashley Dash said. Follow your heart. It will always, always lead you home. So I'm grateful for you and I bless you. And may your day be filled with the revolutionary act of rest and of love, because you're worth it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, ladies, it's been a pleasure. I will make sure that we send you some information afterwards via email. If you haven't already gotten access to emails, just make sure you go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/BW Rusting. BW stands for Black Women, right? Black Women Rusting. And if you're already on the list, just make sure that you confirm that you want to hear from us. We don't want to spam you. If you don't want if you don't want our information, we don't want to send it to you, right? So it's been a pleasure. I will chat with everyone later, and I would love to get some comments, in the email. So if you loved it, if you want to do it again, if you want to hear it, you have questions, all of that wonderful stuff, send it to me via email, and I'll make sure you get a response. So that we can continue being revolutionaries, right? And resting. So you guys have a wonderful day. Sending love and light from Japan. I will chat with you guys later. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
It's been a pleasure. All right, stop the live stream here. And gonna